What do you do when your wife lets her boss cross lines in public while people cheer and call you jealous? How do you protect a child, a paycheck, and your name when group chats rewrite the truth? Can quiet documentation and one lawful action end a storm that started with a single, "It's not serious"? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Calder Bartleby, and I will tell this quietly because anger breaks more than it fixes. At the office mixer, I stepped away to grab drinks and returned to a scene I did not choose. She said it was work play, not serious. I said our home needed rules that kept respect clear. I kept my hands still and counted my breaths. Back in our kitchen, 2 mugs sat on opposite counters like a small map of distance. I placed a dated USB in my desk and let the lock click once. On the wall planner, I circled one day in red and put the marker back where it belongs. My phone showed a silent reminder, downtown 2:05 p.m., and I let it fade. A thin binder labeled Utilities took another sleeve, thicker than bills. I opened a spreadsheet with initials and dates, added a time, then minimized it when footsteps crossed the hall. I set a sticky note on the fridge that read, "Bring forms." She said I was dramatic. I said I was careful. I chose the guest room and smooth sheets over speeches. I told myself to record facts, protect our child, keep work clean, and handle everything properly. Only properly. I came home from the mixer with the careful steps of someone who chose control over display, and I let the door close softly because soft doors keep nights from becoming scenes. I set the bottled water on the counter and placed our keys in their dish. 2 mugs waited on opposite counters like bookends for a conversation neither of us wanted to read aloud. She stood by the sink with the posture she keeps for photos, chin angled toward forgiveness she had already given herself. I asked what she wanted me to believe about what happened while I was at the bar. She said it was work play, not serious, a joke between people who knew the rules. I said rules protect respect, not laughter. She said I was heavy. I said I preferred accurate. I wiped a wet ring from the counter and watched the cloth make a clean circle where a mess had been. Then I folded it once and set it flat. The refrigerator hummed like a steady witness. I kept my voice level and spoke in short pieces. I said I did not like the way her boss placed himself close while the room pretended not to see. She said he was charismatic, that charisma is normal in our city, that I was making a movie from a moment. I said movies use scripts, I use timestamps. I told her I had returned with drinks to find a scene that broke lines. She said I was jealous. I said I was precise. She laughed without humor and checked her phone as if a screen could tell her I was wrong. I let the silence be long enough to matter. I opened the small desk drawer by the hallway and placed a dated USB inside. I turned the key just once and let the lock click. That sound always makes my breathing steady. I took out my notebook and wrote the time I left the table, the time I returned, the length of a toast, the placement of a hand, nothing more. I wrote the word harmless and underlined it once because that word asks to be checked in daylight. I put the notebook down and walked to the wall planner. I circled a day in red and placed the marker exactly where it belongs. I slid a thin sleeve into the binder labeled Utilities, even though it holds more than bills now, and I did not comment on the thickness. My phone lit with a quiet reminder I had set earlier, downtown 9:50 a.m., and I let it pass without sound. She said her sister had already posted a poll about jealous husbands and that people were voting like it was a game show. I said polls are not proof. She said proof depends on who tells the story first. I said proof depends on what can be repeated word for word. She said modern marriages need air. I said houses also need doors that close. She made a face for a camera that was not there and looked pleased with her own performance. I washed one of the mugs, left the other dry, and turned the faucet off in a single clean motion because clean endings save the next hour from echoes. In our room, I laid a folded blanket at the foot of the bed and smoothed the sheet. I placed an extra pillow in the guest room where the lamp tends to wobble and slid it under the base to keep the light calm. The guest bed had a slight crease I did not remember making that morning. I palmed it flat without ceremony. I told myself that order is not revenge. Order is oxygen. I checked Nate's room, lifted the blanket an inch so air could move, and watched his breathing until mine matched it for 5 counts. I shut his door without a click. I returned to the kitchen and flipped the mail so addresses face down. One envelope remained unsealed in the outbox on purpose. A sticky note went up on the fridge. Bring forms. I did not explain it. I do not explain sticky notes. She followed me with a phone face down and said I had embarrassed her at the mixer by taking too long at the bar and coming back with my serious face. I said my face is not a weapon. It is a report. She said Rowan was a friend and a mentor and that networking requires ease. I said ease requires consent. She said I hated her job. I said I hate seeing a promise treated like a prop. She said people flirt in this city and move on. I said we do not move an inch if lines are ignored. She scoffed and brushed past me toward the hall mirror, where she arranged forgiveness into her mouth again. The mirror returned whatever story she needed. I attended to the sink. I opened my laptop at the small desk and brought up a spreadsheet with initials and dates. I added a time and the word mixer, then removed the word because I do not want loaded words, only markers. I minimized the screen when steps crossed behind me. I am not hiding. I am protecting context. A small CloudSync badge blinked file uploaded successfully when a photo of the planner reached the gallery. I closed the lid and rested my palm on it for a beat, as if to say, sleep now, we will use you when we need you. I took a photo of the counter where the water ring had been and a wide shot of the 2 mugs. I saved both to a clean album with a name that means nothing to anyone but me. I set my phone on Do Not Disturb for everyone except school and Clara. I opened my browser and confirmed 3 quiet tabs still loaded. Storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me. I did not read, I only checked presents. The smell of printer toner drifted from the den as if a sheet had fed and fed back out blank. I left it alone. She said I could sleep in our bed if I promised to stop being dramatic. I said I would sleep where my mind could rest. She said I was punishing her. I said I was protecting myself. She said her mother would come by tomorrow to explain how men get insecure when women succeed. I said visits are welcome when rules are respected. She said I was the rule problem, not the rule. I said that schedules, boundaries, and facts would direct my next steps. She called that a threat. I said it was a plan. I kept my hands still. I kept my voice even. I cleaned the sink, then dried the faucet because I like clear metal before sleep. I placed my wallet and keys on the dresser and noticed a small new key on the ring that did not match house, car, or mailbox. I turned it once between finger and thumb and set it down. I would remember its teeth in the morning. I wrote one more line in the notebook. Do not argue, record. Protect Nate first. Keep work clean, handle it properly. I underlined properly once. In the hallway, the air cooled the skin along my neck. I heard the building's elevator somewhere deep in the shaft, a steady machine that believes in floors. I pressed the guest room light off and let the dark fill the corners without hurry. My phone, face down on the dresser, lit the wood with a small rectangle of pale blue. The banner said, private. I did not touch it. It went dark. A second later, a message preview from a thread called Follow-Up flashed a single fragment and then vanished as if someone had remembered themselves. The front door latch clicked once, sharp in the quiet, like a finger tapping a glass for attention. Morning arrived as a checklist, and I welcomed it because lists keep a roof steady when feelings try to move furniture. I brewed coffee, packed Nate's lunch, and set our 2 mugs on opposite counters again, not as a message, only as a map I could follow without noise. He asked about the spelling quiz. I said practice would happen after school with 3 calm rounds. He nodded and ate toast in squares. At the curb, I waited until he walked through the school door. Then I watched the door close because closed doors mark safe transitions. On the drive to work, I kept the radio off and the window open a finger's width. A soft calendar ribbon slid across my phone at the light. Downtown, 1:20 p.m. Meeting, personal. I dismissed it and moved when Green asked me to move. The open plan office worked like a hive that had read about bees but never met one. Forklifts beeped 3 floors below, and the chatter in my row rose and fell like a soundtrack someone forgot to mute. I logged in, checked the routing board, and cleared 2 hold flags on a pair of pallets destined for the East Dock. I created 2 folders on my desktop and named them Archive A and Archive B. I copied the spreadsheet with initials and dates into both and added last night's time marks. The cells stayed clinical. No adjectives, only markers. A chair squeaked behind me and then went quiet, so I minimized the window and checked the dock map. In my top drawer, I taped a small USB under the inside lid, just beneath a plain folder labeled Taxes. The tape held. I closed the drawer and let the click be a small sentence that ends an early thought. A link hit the team chat, posted by someone who likes to be first at everything unimportant. It was Ivy's short reel from the mixer, edited to make my stillness look like a performance, with a caption about men who hate their wives' success. I did not click. A second link followed, a poll that asked if husbands should own moments. I took 2 screenshots, saved them to Archive A, copied them to Archive B, and closed the chat. A Slack bubble popped with laughing reactions. I set my status to focused and returned to the manifest because Freight does not care about polls. On the way to the printer for a label sheet, the machine spooled a blank page first. a small cough of paper with no words. I left the blank in the tray and took my label. 2 coworkers lowered a phone when I approached and tried to show interest in a dashboard that had been static all morning. I said the dashboard looked stable. They agreed too quickly. I returned to my desk and approved an updated route for a truck that had lost a dock slot overnight. Work has a way of rewarding loyalty to the next small task. Mira from HR pinged me with a neutral greeting and asked for a brief check-in regarding public content that might intersect with workplace safety. I replied that I could stop by at 10:15. She confirmed. The HR room smelled like paper that believed in its purpose. She asked if my environment felt safe, and I said yes. She asked if anyone had crossed a line, and I said no, and I wanted to keep it that way. She reminded me that the company aimed to maintain a respectful culture, and I said my focus would remain on schedules, not side stories. The meeting lasted 8 minutes by my watch. We thanked each other in short words, and I left with the relief that comes from procedures that know their lanes. Back at my desk, Dimitri tapped the cube edge. He asked for a quick word later and mentioned that some noise had reached him, but his tone carried care, not threat. I said I was available whenever it suited operations. He said after lunch. I nodded. The day moved on, one freight decision after another. A call labeled private flashed and went dark after 4 rings. I wrote the time in the corner of a sticky note and slid it under the keyboard where I keep unarguable minutes. I ate an apple, approved a liftgate add-on, and answered a routine question about Dock 6C's floor weight. At noon, I drove to the supermarket because ordinary purchases stabilize a mind. I chose rice, bread, fruit, and dish soap. The aisles were a river with islands where people read labels to avoid reading themselves. Near the condiments, I recognized a woman from one of Ivy's posts. She glanced at me, then at her screen, and then at the floor as if gravity had increased. I kept moving. At the freezer case, a man in a team jacket noticed my face, then redirected his cart like rumors leave stains. I checked my list, then the time, then my breathing. In line, the cashier worked with quick hands and a careful smile. Her phone under the counter lit with a group chat. My surname sat in the preview like a hinge. She glanced up and bagged 2 items together that did not belong together, and I separated them with a nod when I reached the end. I paid, wrote the time on the receipt near the printed timestamp, and added 2 words, checkout ping. The bagger held the door a beat longer than needed. Small mercies sometimes look like hesitation. I sat in the car for 1 breath before turning the key. A notification from the community hall rolled across my lock screen, inviting families to a weekend cleanup. I filed it under normal and drove back along the long way, avoiding the intersection where the city likes to test tempers. In the break room, I labeled my lunch save for later, so no one mistook quiet for permission. At my desk, I closed non-essential tabs and returned to the freight queue. Work repeated a clean truth, complete a task, then the next one, and small completions build a bridge across noisy water. An hour before Dimitri's message was due, Ivy's reel updated with a caption that used my first name and a rhyme about control. Laugh reactions climbed. Someone in the row tried to ask if I had seen it, but I did not lift my eyes. I took 2 more screenshots, saved them to Archive A, copied them to Archive B, and then opened my notes to write 1 line. Do not respond to bait. Keep receipts, not rage. A forklift beeped through the floor like a metronome teaching attention. The printer coughed another blank and then printed a manifest for someone else. I kept my focus on the route editor until the numbers made sense. I checked my calendar and saw the silent entry again. Downtown, 1:20 p.m. Meeting personal. I adjusted the time to 1:35 p.m. to avoid overlap with a handoff and set a second silent reminder that read paper drop for tomorrow morning. The phone stayed face down, the drawer stayed closed, the USB under the lid stayed where I had taped it, the spreadsheet lived minimized, but alive. The wall clock clicked with the efficiency of something that did not require belief to do its job. Dimitri appeared at the edge of my cube with a look that said the quick word had matured into right now. He asked if I could step into the hallway for 5 minutes. I stood and picked up my notebook. As we moved, my phone vibrated, lighting the screen with a stack of messages from a group chat that used my name in bold, and a poll about whether I should apologize to Jenna's boss for overreacting. The cashier from earlier had reacted with a laughing face. The preview slid upward while the hallway door swung open. The rooftop mixer lived on a 22nd floor with glass rails and heaters that turned faces into confident claims, and I decided to stand near the stair door so I could watch both the entrance and the wind. The elevator opened in small bursts and delivered groups dressed for being seen. I arrived on time because time is the only thing you can't edit later. Music from 2 speakers pressed against the city noise like a polite argument. I kept water in my hand and my shoulders square. A staff banner hung near the bar with the company logo and the word culture in a bright font. Phones learned it fast. Jenna glided in with Ivy and 3 coworkers who liked to orbit whoever held the camera. She looked at the room like it was a stage that owed her a line. I did not move toward her. I kept to my lane and let the evening show me its plan. Rowan stood by the railing, jacket open, voice warm, the kind that picks its audience first. He greeted people with a touch that lasted a half-second longer than needed. He looked surprised to see me and then pleased, the way a man looks when he thinks he gets to win twice. Ivy called it a work family night and lifted her phone as if work and family were interchangeable parts. A cheer rose on command. A junior staffer told a small story about a sales push. Laughter arrived even when the story did not earn it. A server offered sparkling water, and I said yes because clarity is more useful than courage. I chose a spot that kept the stair lane open. I do not block exits for rooms that might need them later. Rowan retold the mixer moment from last night as mentoring humor. He said the city runs on play and that adults know the line. He said anyone who grabbed drinks at the wrong time can miss the joke. Jenna smiled with a mouth that had learned to pose. She did not look at me. Ivy added that I had brought a serious face back to a light room. The phones turned for my reaction, as if reaction were payment. I gave them stillness. I do not pay with myself. A colleague in a denim jacket stood near the heaters and began asking the circle if nights belong to control or joy. I wrote the words control and joy in my head like 2 columns waiting for evidence. The city air moved napkins like little boats that were not sure which current to trust. I placed my shoe on one corner to keep the floor safe. The light made everyone seem a little better than they were willing to be. I kept count. Who stood close, who filmed, who glanced down, who watched the door. A reminder slid across my phone without sound. Downtown, 7:45 p.m. I dismissed it by letting it pass. I opened the browser to confirm 3 quiet tabs were alive. Storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me, and then I put the phone face down. A clipboard at the welcome table wore one bold word at the top. Statement. The page had no lines to fill, no letterhead, just the word. I touched the board and set it back because I prefer not to carry symbols I am not ready to use. Rowan moved closer to Jenna for a photo. He lifted his glass toward the skyline and said some lines about risk and reward. People laughed because the mic on a confident man is hard to ignore. He said my name like I was a punchline who would not appear. I kept my eyes on the stair door. A junior staffer tried to film my face. I shifted so the heater pole cut his frame. He frowned and then smiled at himself for trying. Ivy announced a toast for courage. Phones went higher. Someone bumped the table and my glass trembled. I caught it and set it flat. I decided to do what I always do when a room asks for a scene. I made small, simple tasks. I checked the distance to the stair, memorized the 2 nearest heaters, and counted the bulbs over the parapet. 7 bulbs, 6 gaps. Counting returns the mind to a floor you can stand on. Jenna said adults do not need permission to be charming, and the circle clapped too fast, in the way a group claps when it is afraid to be last. I wrote the phrase adults do not need permission in the quiet place inside my head, where I store lines I will test later against daylight. A server threaded through with a tray, and I stepped aside first. The worker thanked me. I told him I appreciated order. He did not understand, but he nodded, and I noted who else moved and who did not. The ones who did not were the same ones who would later ask the room to rescue them from their own slogans. Ivy's phone pinged with a poll notification. I saw my first name in a preview on her lock screen. I did not lean in to read it. I do not need exact insults to understand their use. 2 coworkers started a chant for Rowan to tell the mentor story again. He performed it with edits. In his version, boundaries became wit, and my absence for drinks became the defining mistake. He called it timing. Timing can be a truth when the rest is also a truth. The circle laughed. A lens found my face. I gave it the profile of a man who knows that silence is not surrender. Silence is the space where facts grow. I sipped water and looked at the door to the stairwell again. The city hum rose and fell like a tide that did not ask permission from anyone. Ivy moved the group toward the bar rail for the official toast. She said the city is too short for seriousness. The word seriousness slid across the roof like oil on concrete. People gathered into a tighter semicircle that pressed me closer to the stair. The host placed a clipboard back on the welcome table. Statement stared from the top page like a word that did not forgive lies. I checked the time on my watch and wrote the minute in my head. I checked my breathing. I reopened my notes and typed 4 words in a draft I did not send. Play, harmless, control, crime. I closed it again. A small wind made hair move and confidence wobble. Jenna told Ivy she wanted a slow-motion shot of the toast for the reel. I did not count the phones. I counted the faces that would later pretend not to remember. The denim jacket colleague turned and asked the circle if anyone objected to adults being adults. It was a fake courtroom question because it erased the equal rule: no one owns anyone. The heaters hissed, and a napkin lifted and landed at my shoe. I bent, picked it up, and placed it under my glass. I prefer floors that do not become problems. The toast started. Glasses rose. The word freedom made its round, the way words do when they want applause more than sense. Rowan stepped half an inch closer to Jenna for the frame. Phones leaned. A camera flash burst white against the glass rail and erased edges for a second. Someone called my name from the far side as if to test whether I would play my part. I refused the stage by standing still. My phone vibrated in my pocket as a group chat pinged my name in the preview. The elevator bell sounded behind the stair door like a metronome restarting a room that had lost count. The family restaurant wore its comfort on the walls, with framed sailboats and a shelf of empty bottles that looked like trophies for evenings that promised to behave, and our long table sat under soft bulbs that made everything seem forgivable. The host guided us to the middle row where a birthday banner for a cousin waited to be important. Place cards divided conversations before anyone spoke. I chose a chair at the edge where I could see both the entrance and the window, because clear lines ease a crowded room. Jenna sat near the cake spot, face turned toward the aisle so light would find her. Ivy spread phones like silverware and arranged a centerpiece out of attention. Marta breathed the word unity like it could be set between plates and swallowed without chewing. I poured water for Nate and for myself, and I moved the breadbasket away from the phone pile so a child could be a child without walking through screens. Salads arrived, and people rehearsed small talk they wanted the room to keep. A cousin asked if my job was still steady, and I said schedules help freight, and people both. Another cousin asked if I still opposed fun. I said I preferred clear rules because rules prevent messes that require lies to clean. Ivy said last night's mixer was normal, and that I had turned a joke into a headline. I said headlines do not interest me. Marta said work is theater sometimes, and husbands should not boo from the seats. I said respect is not a prop. The server refilled water like she had been trained to erase sparks with liquid. Nate asked if the cake would have sparkler candles, and I said probably yes. He clapped and watched the kitchen door with hope, which is a language adults forget to practice. The talk migrated, as talk does, to the rooftop toast and the clip where Rowan told his mentor story. Ivy said people loved his delivery. Marta said I could learn from a man who knew how to keep rooms light. A friend of a friend added that jealous men always stand by stair doors. I said stair doors keep crowds from becoming problems. Jenna said I had overreacted after grabbing drinks and made her boss feel policed. I said I had seen a line. She said lines are for hall monitors. I said they are for adults who mean what they promise. The table performed a chorus of "Oh, come on" in soft voices that felt rehearsed. I kept my posture small and exact. I cut my chicken into honest pieces and finished each one before speaking again. Between the main course and the cake, I excused myself and walked to the corridor where the restrooms and the payphone were, because the old fixtures keep rooms grounded. I took out my phone and opened the calendar. I added a quiet entry for later in the week. Downtown, 11:10 a.m., no location, no invite. I made it silent. I slid back to the gallery and confirmed the photo of a page with only the word statement at the top. The cloud badge had already flashed, file uploaded successfully earlier, and left the screen clean. A busser turned the corner with a tray, and I stepped aside first. He nodded thanks and continued. I washed my hands longer than needed, and told my face to return to the table like a tool, not a message. When I sat, the sparkler candles lit the cake, and the performance worked because fire always wins the vote. We sang. I clapped for the cousin, and I clapped for the child who believes in birthdays more than deficits. Ivy held her phone high and pivoted toward me when the song said family, and I looked at Nate and lifted my water to him. The knife moved through icing with the confidence of custom. Slices landed on plates. People chose sizes that matched their hunger for attention. I took a small piece because sugar can lie to a heart, and I wanted honesty for the next hour. Outside, the evening had rinsed the noise into the alley. We walked to the park because swings negotiate with children better than speeches. The chain squeaked in a slow meter that matched my breath. Nate asked if we were angry with each other forever. I said I was choosing steady, not angry. He asked if a boss can touch someone in a way a husband would not like if it happens at a party. I said rules do not change where music is loud. He asked why Mommy said it was networking if I said it was a line. I said adults sometimes rename lines when they want them to move. He nodded like he was filing that sentence in a drawer that would open again later. A pair of teenagers tried to angle their short video to catch us, then changed direction when they understood my face was not available for their story. A runner looped the path and retied a shoe with the discipline of someone who needed one thing they could fix. On a bench, I checked my notes and added a single line. Child asked if party rules erase house rules. I kept the phone low and away from the swing arc. I traced the red circle on the wall planner in my head and pictured the binders at home. Home, auto, bank, aligned like spine bones. Simple order holds people up while they argue about air. The swing slowed. I pressed my palm to his back and caught him on the last glide. We walked to the car counting dogs and streetlights because numbers steady a ride. At home, I set the 3 binders where they belong and slid a clear sleeve into bank, not to fill it now, only to have space ready if a day asked for it. I flipped the mail so addresses face down and left the unsealed envelope in the outbox again, its small open mouth reminding me that words leave when they are ready. I placed our mugs on opposite counters and rinsed the sink dry because clean metal accepts light kindly. In the hallway, I tested the small new key on my ring in the lockbox. It turned cleanly and told me precision still works somewhere in a world that rewards performance. I checked Nate's homework plan on the fridge and moved the sticky note bring forms so it did not cover tomorrow's spelling list. Jenna came in with the smell of heater bars on her jacket and said the family agreed I was punishing her with distance. I said distance protects a house from sparks. She said Rowan was only being charming and that I had humiliated her by leaving early last night. I said I did not own the night. I owned my choices. She said Marta wanted to talk to me alone. I said doors are open when rules are respected. She said I was cold. I said I was clear. She said if I kept acting like a guard, people would think I was controlling. I said people can think anything. I will keep Nate safe and our schedule honest. The refrigerator hummed as if it understood contracts better than we did. I took Nate to rehearse the school pickup route because practice beats panic when bells ring and parking lots forget manners. I showed him where to stand, where not to step, and how to read my hand signal for stop even if he wants to run. He liked the arrows on the asphalt and walked them like a maze with a known exit. 2 parents near the gate spoke in low voices about a pole in Ivy's story and glanced toward me as if their eyes might learn something by accident. They looked away when I did not feed them with a face. A teacher waved at Nate and gave me the nod that adults trade when they agree to keep children out of adult weather. We returned to the building and took the stairs instead of the elevator because I wanted a quiet minute to let my choices catch up to my feet. The stairwell smelled like concrete and floor cleaner that tried hard. At our door, I heard steps pause on the landing opposite, the breathing of someone who had lifted a hand and decided against knocking. Inside, the apartment was orderly in the way that keeps stories from spilling. I put my phone face down on the counter. It vibrated once with a call labeled private and then stopped. The screen lit again with a new message preview from a thread named follow-up, and then the preview disappeared as if the sender had canceled courage. A key turned in the neighbor's lock down the hall, and the short metal sound relocated attention away from our door. The parking garage kept its cool air like a promise, and I stood beside the pillar marked B4 until my breathing matched the hum of the vent. The concrete smelled like old rain and warmed rubber. I set the grocery bag in the trunk, lined the handles together, and closed it softly. Headphones rested around my neck, not for music, but to mark that I was on a serious call, or about to be. I checked my phone and saw the quiet entry I had placed that morning. Downtown, 3:25 p.m. Meeting. Personal. I let it pass without sound. A number without a name tried to reach me. The screen said private, then slipped away after 4 rings. I wrote the time on a small card in my wallet and slid the card back where honest minutes live. A sedan rolled past, slowed to study me, then continued when the driver recognized that I was not a scene. I started the serious call with short sentences and no names. I said I was documenting a pattern, not seeking an argument. I said a child's schedule comes first. I said my goal was order, not punishment. The stairwell door opened and closed somewhere behind me, and I paused so my own voice would not carry. When I ended the call, I lowered the headphones to my collar and listened to the garage find its quiet again. I placed my palm on the roof of the car and told myself to keep everything repeatable and kind. The arrow toward the exit pointed up the ramp. I moved when I decided, not when a line of paint told me to. On the metro platform, the yellow stripe drew a clear boundary across the floor, and I respected it because rules save strangers without applause. The train arrived with a soft push of air. Inside the car, I took a place near the window so I could watch my face and the city at the same time. 2 teenagers filmed a dance and then argued about lighting. They solved nothing and laughed anyway. A ribbon slid across my screen, unknown number again, and I dismissed it. In my notes app, I typed 3 lines. Keep records kind. Do not taunt. Handle it properly. I underlined properly and put the phone away. The car rocked like a body learning balance again. At home, the apartment held its clean edges. I washed my hands and dried the sink because metal that reflects light keeps thoughts from wandering. I flipped the mail so the address is face down and left the unsealed envelope in the outbox on purpose. I aligned the 3 binders labeled Home, Auto, Bank so their spines made a single line. In the small desk, I opened the locked drawer, placed a single USB labeled with today's date beside the others, and closed the drawer until it clicked once. The click felt like a seatbelt catching before a long road. I opened the laptop, and the spreadsheet with initials and dates waited exactly where I left it. I added 2 times and 1 short note that would still make sense tomorrow morning. I copied the file to Archive A, and then to Archive B, checked the timestamps, and minimized the window when footsteps moved behind me. I am not hiding. I am protecting context from people who confuse drafts with verdicts. Jenna came in with cold air in her hair and said Ivy's new reel proved I was controlling. I said reels do not prove anything. She said the city loved Rowan's confidence and that I should learn from men who keep the room light. I said rooms get light when rules protect respect. She said I was suffocating the marriage with policies. I said policies keep 3 lives out of holes. She said I made her look bad by leaving the rooftop ring early. I said I left the ring and kept my dignity. She said we could fix this if I stopped acting like a guard. I said I would act like a father who respects doors, nights, and rules. She rolled a smile over her face like paint and set her phone to record her calm. I poured water and let the silence sit until it had weight. I moved to the hallway and tested the small new key on my ring in the lockbox. It turned cleanly, which told me precision still works where performance fails. In the den, the shredder hummed once and stopped as if it bit air. The printer pulled a blank page through and left it in the tray like a soft question. I left it there. At the fridge, I adjusted the sticky note Bring Forms so it did not cover Nate's spelling list. I took a single photo of the wall planner's red circle and saved it to the hidden album. A cloud badge flashed. File uploaded successfully and vanished. I do not chase signals, I collect them. Rhea arrived to drop off a workbook Nate had forgotten. She stood in the doorway, eyes on me, and asked in plain tone if we were keeping Saturday morning. I said yes. She said she could extend it to lunch if needed. I said that would help. She looked at Jenna and said nothing to her, which was kinder than any speech. When Rhea left, Mr. Ruiz passed in the hall and gave our door a glance that carefully avoided curiosity. He has learned that decency is the art of letting other people keep their faces. I set 2 mugs on opposite counters again, not to taunt, but to map. I made tea and set my mug by my elbow and left the other dry and upside down by the fruit bowl. Nate came out holding a worksheet with 3 misspelled words and asked if he could fix them now. I said yes, and that I admired people who correct themselves. He corrected them and grinned, and I returned the worksheet to his folder. Jenna watched and said I was trying to recruit him to my side. I said I was recruiting him to schedules that keep him safe. Later, in the guest room, I smoothed the sheet and tucked the spare pillow under the lamp base to stop its small wobble. I wrote 3 lines in my notebook. Kitchen conversation, Saturday plan, public posts. I kept the words plain. I kept my hands steady. I kept my breath slow. I walked back to the living room and found Jenna recording a story about boundaries while calling them cages. She asked if I intended to keep punishing her with distance. I said punishment is not my language. I said order is my language. I said I would handle it properly. She asked if I was threatening legal trouble. I said I was promising lawful clarity. She said I would regret it. I said I regretted only that we had arrived at a point where procedures must replace trust. She paced and said she would tell her mother that I was planning to embarrass the family. I said embarrassment is a choice people make when they prefer applause to reflection. She said Rowan thought I owed him an apology. I said meaning is measured by behavior, not captions, and that I would not apologize for asking adults to keep their hands to their lanes. She asked if I could at least keep this off the internet. I said I could not control other people's feeds. I could only control my steps, and my steps would be careful and written down. In the kitchen, I washed my mug and left it upside down on the rack beside nothing else. I turned off the light and let the dark come in clean. In the hall, the building's elevator bell sounded once, a clear chime that lands like punctuation. My phone vibrated. Dimitri's message arrived with the exact words I expected. Need a quick word first thing. I replied with 1 line confirming the time. I placed the phone face down and looked at Jenna. I said I would handle it properly. I did not repeat myself. I did not raise my voice. I let the sentence live in the room without decoration. The office tower lobby kept its morning light like a clean rule, and I arrived early because process deserves punctual shoes. I confirmed Nate was with Clara and set my phone to accept only their calls. I stood near, not in, the traffic line where the guard could see me and strangers could pass without adjusting their paths. Elevators opened and closed with soft certainty. A plant cart rolled by. The hour hand touched 11. Jenna appeared with Ivy 2 steps behind, phone already lifted and then lowered when faces turned. Rowan hovered near the directory as if letters might offer cover. I did not step toward anyone. I kept my hands still and my breathing even. An authorized server approached, verified names, and spoke in neutral phrases that do not invite performance. Envelopes exchanged hands in the open. Acknowledgement was noted. The documents were a divorce petition with temporary financial and possession orders. Custody planning was implied by what took effect today. Nothing more said aloud. The lobby did not pause for our moment. A courier signed a clipboard. Security redirected a wandering visitor. Life insisted on continuing while the process took its exact shape. Jenna asked if I understood what I was doing. I said I was following procedure. She said I was cruel. I said I was being clear. Ivy raised her camera and then let it drop when a bystander shook a head. Rowan studied the directory and drifted backward until glass met his shoulder. The server confirmed completion and stepped away. I folded my copy once and placed it in a slim folder that disappeared inside my jacket without bulging. I did not explain, apologize, or argue. Reasons belong on paper more than on air. I sent Clara a single word that meant on schedule. I checked the sightline to the exit and waited for the lobby clock to click. The guard returned to stillness. Someone laughed about a meeting at 13. The building sounded like work beginning, which is exactly how endings should sound. I turned toward the doors when the elevator chimed the half hour because there was nothing left to add that would improve the truth. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.